Welcome to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio, the weekly radio news magazine that we put together here at the Virginia Institute for Public Policy. We have a couple of great guests coming up, but we begin with highlights. Our microphones were in Richmond this past Monday for the VCDL Lobby Day rallies that inspired so many 50,000 strong descending on the Capitol of the Commonwealth. We begin with our host, whose offices we broadcasted from, Delegate Nick Freitas. It really comes down to the red flag laws, because we watch Western Albemarle High School has a smartphone app where the students can get their classmates put to detention just by anonymously posting something to the dean. We're going down to a place where we don't have one big brother. We have 300 million deputized little brothers.
Well, and again, I think that's a big part of the problem. When we look at what red flags, when we look how the press talks about red flags generally, it's always from this perspective of, well, this is going to prevent guns falling into the hands of someone that's potentially dangerous, or if someone is suicidal, we now have a mechanism in order to get the gun away. And so the general population hears that and thinks, well, that makes perfect sense. The question always comes into the execution of the law, right? Again, we don't legislate intentions, we write laws, and those laws are going to be interpreted by courts, by law enforcement officials. So if you think about a red flag law, what it essentially comes down to is if somebody has a beef with you, if they have a problem, they go to a magistrate and they say, hey, I think that person's dangerous, and here's a tweet they made, out of context or whatever it is. And that magistrate goes to a judge and convinces that judge. You got to look how they're thinking about it from the perspective of a government official. Is their motivation at that point to protect your Second Amendment rights and to protect due process of law, or is their motivation at that point to, quote, protect the public and get guns out of your hands, right? They're going to automatically be predisposed to want to confiscate your firearms, even if you pose absolutely no threat.
And you don't have really a recourse at that point. There's no...
Well, and that's the point, right? It would be, now if this process ended with, and then they'll file charges and you get a day in court and you get a jury of your peers and you get access to legal counsel, I think all of us could look at that and say, okay, this is the same process that we go through for a crime. But none of those other things happen. Once that magistrate and once that judge have decided, for whatever reason, whatever guidance they're using, that you're now a threat, they can now come in and confiscate your property without giving you any due process of law. That should be terrifying to us.
We were also joined by Delegate John McGuire. Bill of Rights sanctuaries we need to start here, because it's not just Second Amendment, it's First and Fourth and Fifth and down the line.
Well, there's a reason why our founding fathers refused to ratify the Constitution without the Second Amendment right. But think about the mindset of what they were going through. Evil does exist, and there's a bully on every corner. If you don't stand up to him, it only gets worse. It is our God-given right to protect ourselves, our family, and our children, and I do not understand what part of shall not infringe they don't understand.
Well, we were talking about Qasem Soleimani earlier, and I brought up the fact that this guy was able to do the things he did in Iraq because these were unarmed civilians, and he had the guys, what did you call them, Tom? Toyota Jihad?
Toyota Jihadis, yeah.
But that's an important, go back to Hirohito and saying we don't invade America because there's going to be a gun pointing from behind every blade of grass, so on and so forth. There's a reason we have these laws. What is it that Michael Bloomberg doesn't get about them?
Well, it's all about power and control. He bought Virginia's election. It's amazing when Governor Northam showed up in blackface in the KKK outfit, and everybody wanted him to resign. And then all of a sudden, millions of dollars are coming in. He's giving all these guys, these people that one day wanted him to resign, are now supporting him. So it's all about power and control.
John McGuire, I know that we got a lot to talk about as the years go on. What's going on?
Let me talk about a couple of my gun bills. You guys remember there was a tragic shooting down at Virginia Beach in May. Well, there was a woman named Kate Nixon. She was an excellent shot. And they knew there was going to be a threat at work the next day. So her husband said, carry your gun. Mm-hmm. And she said, I can't. It's a gun-free zone. So she called him up on the phone that day and said, honey, I just got shot in the shoulder. Call 911. And then the guy came by and killed her. So what I propose is a law. I'm calling it the Kate Nixon Act, and it says if you get shot in a gun-free zone, you can sue the government.
I was right. Somebody asked me about this on Friday, and I said I knew somebody in Virginia had a bill like this because there's a similar one in Michigan.
Well, think about this. They're either going to pass it or they're not. And if they don't, and God forbid it's just a matter of time, they're going to have to answer to the American people because they have sovereign immunity right now, and it makes no sense. They're trying to make us all helpless victims. and we're not. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I knew I wasn't crazy, but Friday I couldn't find it. So what's the name of the bill again?
It's called the Kate Nixon Act.
Well, the tracking number so people can.
Got it. It's House Bill 162, and I got a couple more I want to tell you about. I've got House Bill 161, which is constitutional carry. It's in our Constitution. I don't know why people don't understand that. I've also got House Bill 373. It's the Jack Wilson Act. And it basically, just like Texas, they repealed their law. You couldn't carry a weapon in a church. And then Jack Wilson and 7 people pulled a weapon and saved many lives. So the Jack Wilson Act is House Bill 373. And then there's one more. I think it makes a lot of sense. I was part of the school safety task force in Louisa County for about a year. I went to all the meetings. And what we came up with is we put an armed police officer in every public school, elementary, middle, and high school, right? So I've got House Bill 424 that puts an armed school resource officer in every public school in the Commonwealth.
The current districting of Virginia has only had 2 people represent the 22nd district as it stands right now in the Virginia Senate, and we had both of them, Mark Peake and our co-host for the day, Tom Garrett.
What an honor and a responsibility it was to follow Tom in the Senate. He's just done an incredible job and just does a great job expressing our views and values.
Well, express a little bit of what went on last week in the Senate. It was Fast and Furious, not the movie series, but it seemed like this rush to legislate was really at breakneck pace on some of these gun bills.
Well, and several of their issues. But first of all, let's follow up on what Tom said. Everybody who's listening, who's coming to Richmond, we are so happy to have you. Express your views. Please, everybody, control their tempers, control themselves. The main thing we want is safety for everybody, a peaceful assembly. That's what the Constitution guarantees. Let's do it.
And there's going to be a lot of people trying to get you to break that. You know, there are going to be people who are going to try to bait you into the fight. It's like the guys in hockey that are, you know, they push you and then you retaliate and you're the one with the 5-minute minor.
In the penalty box. So don't let anybody instigate anything. Just stay calm. But, yeah, they've had these gun bills ready to go. They've been bringing them for a number of years. While the whole time Tom was here, we had the majority and we could vote them down. But now they ran through 3 of them. I tell you, the one they're having a problem with is the red flag bill.
Thank God.
They see how unconstitutional it is. You have a couple of lawyers on the Democrat side who realize how horrible it is for people to be able to go get warrants to search your house for one thing and then to be able to take anything that they find in your house. They understand how this is just rife with potential problems, and a lot of them have minority representatives where they know that's the community that's really been violated by these search warrants and unwarranted searches, and so they know it's a problem. That's what can happen with these red flag bills. They're still going to pass something, I'm afraid, but we're doing everything we can to keep them from being passed and to keep something just horrendous from being passed.
And it's not that you're doing it to stop people from being protected from people who have mental health issues at all, but it's about understanding the macro, and the macro is that when we start trying to create security at the expense of freedom, and we're not talking about guns, really, we're talking about due process, we're talking about search and seizure. And then if you go back on the historical timeline, and it's an irrefutable fact, gun control was the legitimate offspring of a segregationist, racist South, right? The African-American population is freed from servitude, and then the racists who sought to maintain power thought, well, what we don't want is an armed black populace. And so it's minority communities who suffer. I've said a million times, I like the idea of red flag laws. I like the idea of due process and non-violative search and seizure even more. And I can't get to a place where red flag laws work as they're constructed.
In the crowd, we caught up with Senator Bill Stanley.
Be here, and great day of freedom, right here.
So look at this crowd. I know that the media tried to pre-hype this like, oh, it's going to be Charlottesville Part 2, but I was in Charlottesville Part 1, and this is nothing like it. This is just a bunch of people who are, quite honestly, huddling together for warmth.
Yeah, and you know how our government treats those that petition their government for their grievances. They've put them in fences, and they keep them. They're scared of them, and they're afraid of them. And quite frankly, so when the teachers come out next week, are we going to keep the fences up?
Well, I was thinking maybe if we held a pro-Second Amendment rally on the border, we'd get the Democrats to build the fence.
Suddenly they like walls, don't they?
So, Senator, have you been talking to a lot of folks in your office on Lobby Day so far?
Absolutely, like we always do. This is one of the great lobby days that we have in the Commonwealth of Virginia right here in the Capitol. They're being treated like second-class citizens, not only in asserting their First Amendment rights to protect their Second Amendment rights, but they're also being treated like second-class citizens for their belief in the Second Amendment, which these Democrats are here to destroy. And they're starting now. This is not a one-time thing. This is going to be a continuing problem on and on and on. And you know what? They're afraid. Those Democrats are afraid of this crowd. And is it because they possess a firearm or because they differ on the views that the Democrats have when it comes to this amendment of the Constitution?
Well,
I dare say it's the latter.
Well, I'm no demographics expert, but I also hazard to say part of the reason they're afraid is those aren't all Republicans there.
No. In fact, these are people that have come and say that all amendments matter, the second one especially, and that's exactly why they're here today, and that makes them so proud. I'm so proud of them.
Well, thank you, and keep going. I know that there have been some victories in the Senate, at least on the red flag laws. So keep doing what we can, and we'll try to win the House and Senate back.
Joe, I think this is a monumental day for Virginia, and I think what we're going to find here is that we have awakened the slumbering giant, and those Democrats in Northern Virginia are going to pay for that.
Freedom and Prosperity Radio's special coverage of VCDL Lobby Day. We also caught up with everybody's favorite farmer, Martha Boneta.
Look, listen, so many farmers all across our great nation and here in Virginia, we rely on the ability to defend our farms, to defend our families. Like all hardworking Americans, we have a right to defend our businesses and also from predators for our livestock, for example. But moreover than that, this is what we're experiencing here right now is the American people, the voice of the people, the will of the people, coming here to Richmond from all over Virginia, all over our country, fighting to defend our most fundamental rights. And I'm just so proud and so honored to be a part of it all.
Now, it's just early on in the day, although there are a lot of folks who were here at 5 a.m. when we got here this morning. Talk about how the media is covering what is here so far. It looks like the media hasn't been given anything really to out and miscast as radical or crazy or nutty.
When I look out and I see all of these thousands upon thousands of Americans, I see great law-abiding citizens who love America, love our great nation, and believe in the American dream, and that means defending our our constitutional rights. I really believe there's a reason why the founders, have the Second Amendment after the First. And when you look out here and you see these barriers, we are on the foot. These are Jefferson steps, and I can tell you, I believe that he never envisioned that there would be barriers and walls, keeping the American people away with all of these restrictions.
And we were also joined by Showmasters founder Annette Eliot, who runs gun shows all through the Commonwealth, and asked her the most poignant question. First and foremost, explain this gun show loophole that everyone in the press keeps talking about.
Nothing happens magical at the door of a gun show. So all the laws that apply across the state apply inside of the buildings at a gun show.
I had made this case about the governor talking about individual transfers of firearms to one another, that they make, casually speaking, and I know some statistician will try to debunk this, but less than 5% of all firearms transactions are a dad giving a gun to his son who would grow up to maybe be a congressman or soldier or something like that, present company included. So a lot of this is mischaracterizing things using what I like to call inaccurate language. We leave words out. We say, oh, well, what I said was true. It just wasn't complete.
Well, right. So think about this. You have a gun show that is open to the public. We have Virginia State Police mandatory at the building. More than half of the exhibitors are former law enforcement or military or present. So you have the eyes of all of these people here at the show. The public, we don't stop anybody from coming in. You pay admission, you come in, anybody can see this. Media come in, people can use their cameras. It is open to the public. So the idea that in these events, this is where bad things are happening. If you were a criminal, you would go to the corner and you would buy and sell there in a dark corner, not in front of everybody.
We'll be right back with our guests next on Freedom and Prosperity Radio.